Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, hi, I'm Cassidy. If it's not, thanks for always tuning into my videos. Today we are going over my favorite dystopian or apocalyptic books. This is a subgenre of sci-fi that I actually quite enjoy, and I haven't read a lot in a while, so if you have any recommendations, let me know down below. But I figured I'd give you some of my recommendations in case you haven't read them. We're going to start with one of my favorite sci-fi authors, which is Hugh Howey, and we have the Wool or the Silo series by Hugh Howey. This is a trilogy. This follows a world where Earth is uninhabitable, and the people of Earth go into a silo to survive. And they're not allowed to go outside because if they step outside, they'll die. There is a murder mystery plotline that happens within this first book, and we follow in the silos. One of the things that happens is if you commit a crime, you are sent outside to clean their camera because they only have one camera that lets them see the outside. And they're hoping that one day they'll be able to inhabit Earth again outside of these silos. They need to be able to see, so they send their criminals outside to clean their camera, but it's a death sentence. I really enjoyed this trilogy. I will say Hugh Howey is an author who likes to leave things a little bit open-ended, which is something that I thought I didn't like, but I've learned to really enjoy. He has said himself that he's a really big fan of fan fiction and that he likes to leave his stories a little bit open for people to write fan fiction, which is kind of interesting. The first book in the series, Wool, was written as like short stories and then put together, but I do think it flows very nicely as a book. And then we have the second book and the third book in the series. I definitely highly recommend the Silo series. If you are participating in Realmathon, which is coming up in April, this is one of my host favorites. The second book on this list is also going to be from Hugh Howey, which is Sand. Sand follows Earth again, where sand just continuously comes onto this part of the planet and buries it. So what we know today in present day Earth has been buried over thousands and thousands of sand kernels, and people within this world go sand diving. It's kind of like scuba diving, but they're diving through the sand looking for like hidden treasures of the past. And it's a really horrible climate to live in because like your house just eventually gets covered with sand and you gotta figure it out. You can have sand cave-ins, there's a bunch of stuff, and we follow a family within this story and what they're going through within this climate. I really enjoyed Sand. It's shorter. It's my favorite out of the Hugh Howey I've read. I have one other Hugh Howey to read, but it's not a dystopian. Another dystopian I really enjoyed was Docile by K.M. Sparza. This is a heavy-hitting book, and there are triggers for all sorts of things, specifically like sexual abuse. The tagline of this book is "There is no consent under capitalism." So in this story, we have debt that now doesn't go away when you die. Instead, your family inherits it. And in order to get out of debt, a lot of people sell themselves into the docile trade and become a docile. What this means is that you're essentially selling your body and everything to be a willing slave for someone else, to do whatever someone else asks for you. And there is this drug called Docile that people can take. You don't have to take it when you become a docile, but most people do take it. But the after effects are quite extreme. Some of it's unknown, and there's other things, but most people do take it because you essentially become anything, do anything that people force you to do. And this drug makes it so that you are just docile the entire time and that you don't really know what you're committing. You kind of forget it later. You don't know what you were forced to do. Things like that. You just kind of like, you're just high the entire time. And we follow a protagonist who sells himself in order to pay off his family debt, but he refuses to take the drug, which is in his rights. And we follow just what trauma can do to someone. It's a very heartbreaking story of what you can be conditioned to become and things like that. And we follow two characters in this. Technically, we follow our main character who sells himself, and then we also follow his like owner. It's a very interesting dynamic. I really loved the themes in this and the discussions, but like there is so much triggers in this book, so definitely be warned. Then we have The Birthyard by Mallory Tater. This book reminds me of conversations and concepts we see in books such as The Handmaid's Tale. In The Birthyard, we follow a cult, and in this cult, females are controlled by men, specifically any sexual stuff, their rights to their own bodies, pregnancies, anything like that. And we follow a character who's kind of rebelling against this and doesn't want the men in the society to decide what she can or can't do with her body. I don't want to say too much about this one. I enjoyed this one. I think that we have some really important discussions, and specifically, I think if you liked The Handmaid's Tale, I highly recommend this one. I liked The Handmaid's Tale. Honestly, I think that if you would even just like kind of enjoy The Handmaid's Tale, this is another book that is comparable to it and has interesting themes and conversations and discussions that we see in The Handmaid's Tale, specifically about women's fertility being controlled by other people. But I will say, like, I'm classifying this book as dystopian, but technically it happens within our world now. It's just like a totalitarian like state. Then we have The Long Walk by Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King. I don't tend to love a lot of Stephen King, but The Long Walk is one I really, really enjoyed. I wouldn't call it a horror, though. It's definitely more of that dystopian feel. In this, we're following characters who go on something called The Long Walk. So if you are broke, if you need to improve your life, you can join The Long Walk. What this is one giant walk. You walk until there's no one left standing, and the person who wins gets the prize. They essentially get anything they've ever asked for. We follow a character, obviously, who joins because he needs money, he needs to survive, but you can't stop for anything. So you have, like, I think 3 kind of like slow down moments, but anytime you stop moving, you die. So people walk for hours and hours and hours. They pee their pants. They can't stop to go to the washroom. They can't stop to eat. They can't stop for cramps. And it's just like a psychological book about what happens to someone during this and watching the people around you die off. I really enjoyed this one and definitely recommend it. We have a well-known one, which is Scythe, which is a YA utopian series technically, but I feel like that counts as dystopian. Most utopians and dystopians mirror each other and have the same vibes. So in Scythe, we have Earth where death is no longer a thing. Nobody dies from old age or illnesses or freak accidents because we have figured out a way to just like revive everyone and everything. But Earth still can't handle overpopulation. We can't just expand exponentially and not have any repercussions. Earth just isn't made for that. So there still has to be a way to keep death alive and to keep the population under a certain amount. So we have these things called scythes, who their job is essentially to go around and kill people. They have certain quotas to make in each quarter of the year, and they glean people is technically what it's called, and they go around and glean people, and being a scythe is an honor, I guess, but there's more to it than that. And in Scythe we follow 2 characters who are picked to maybe become scythes, and you get to see kind of the corruption of humanity within this and how humans are humans, even when you take away death and don't make us like human anymore. You get to see the Thunderhead, which is like an AI being that controls everything, and that's why like Earth is perfect now. And there's a bunch of other like beautiful discussions. Something I just love about dystopian is the conversations we have in it. I just think it's one of those subgenres that's just like rich in discussions on humanity and mankind and corruption and government and things like that, and rights. And I really, really love it, and I highly recommend the Scythe series. I didn't love the 3rd book, but recently read Gleanings, which is a collection of short stories, and adored it. So I definitely recommend. And then we have The Girl with All the Gifts, which is technically like a sci-fi horror. It's classified as a horror, I think, technically on Goodreads and stuff, but I think it fits like this dystopian genre better. And like obviously like, a little bit more of the like apocalypse added to it. In The Girl with All the Gifts, we're following a world where we have zombies. We follow an institution where they're testing on children, and these children have zombie qualities to them. They are zombies, but for some reason they can also act human in some ways, and there's like limits to it. And this institution is essentially just set there to put experiments on these kids to figure out why they are affected this way and why they aren't fully zombies like other people, to obviously help try and find a cure so that humanity can like live on without the zombies. And if you're bit, you're good to go. And I really liked the institution setting of this. I find there's something deeply chilling and an intense conversation to be had about what we will do to children and what we will do to save mankind, and I think this book handles that really well. And we see a main character struggle a little bit. We follow one of the children in this book, which I think was such an interesting take and such a unique choice for a story like this, to be following one of these zombies, essentially. This also has a movie adaptation made of it, and it's Chef Kiss. I like both the movie and the book, and they are slightly different. Highly recommend this one, especially if you like horror-ish. And my last recommendation is kind of stretches a little bit away from the dystopian part, but I do think that there's still a little bit of a concept of dystopian here, so I would count it. And it is Red Rising by Pierce Brown. This follows humanity has moved to Mars to make Mars safe. So we follow Darrow, who is a red, and he is like the lowest class in society. So he works all day believing that he is trying to make Mars a better place for humanity. Little does he know that the top of Mars has already been colonized, and that humanity has already made its way to Mars. Mars is safe, and they are essentially just using these reds to help build society up without telling them what they're actually doing. They give them the shit work, the shit jobs in the middle of Mars where people die all the time and they don't have proper food and things like that. So I do think that this still fits dystopian, but it's set on Mars, which kind of makes it like an interesting version of it. And in ways, the first book of this is often compared to The Hunger Games, so if you like The Hunger Games, I think that you'll like this one. I personally enjoyed the first book quite a bit, but I know a lot of people who think the second and the third are stronger, but the first is my favorite. And I really hope that you enjoy this list. Honorable mentions, of course, to The Hunger Games, to Divergent, to Handmaid's Tale. We have these classics in this genre, but these are some of the recommendations that I feel like I don't hear about as much. I mean, Red Rising and Scythe are pretty popular, but I still think that they deserve the love, and I really, really enjoyed them. And just to finish this video off, I'm going to list a couple that are on my TBR. I'm not going to go over them. A couple that I do want to read is Orcs and Crake by Margaret Atwood, Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer, Elder Race by Adrian Tchaikovsky, Recruitment by K.A. Riley, and I believe the Wayward Pine series by Blake Crouch also counts, and those are all on my TBR somewhere. If you made it all the way to the end of this video and you'd like to leave me an emoji just to say you were here, leave me some kind of tree emoji. And then if you have any recommendations for dystopian books or post-apocalyptic books, or even utopian books, let me know down below. If you'd like to connect with me on other platforms, my Bookstagram, my Book Twitter, my Goodreads, and my Patreon, all linked in the description bar below. Have yourselves an absolutely remarkable day.